2003 held what many consider to be the greatest NBA draft of all time. It consisted of future NBA Hall of Famers and champions, including LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. Everyone knew who was going to go first overall. The prodigal son, LeBron James, returned to his home of Cleveland, Ohio. The rest of the draft, though, that fell on what Detroit was going to do with the number 2 overall pick. Heading into the draft, the Pistons were coming off a 50-win season and went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. They had a loaded roster that consisted of Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, and Ben Wallace. Detroit's biggest need was a big man, considering Ben Wallace was 29 years old at the time and the oldest of their core 4 players. Ultimately, they went ahead and drafted Serbian Darko Milicic over Carmelo Anthony, who was coming off a national championship run with Syracuse. All considering, this pick didn't hurt the Pistons in any way in the following years. Although they didn't take the best player available and missed out on drafting a future Hall of Famer, they ultimately won a championship, taking down the Los Angeles Lakers in 5 games the following year in the NBA Finals. They avoided the headache of figuring out whether they should start Carmelo or not, and making him a vital part of their offense. The chemistry in Detroit was already as good as it was going to get, and adding Carmelo could have thrown things off. Years later, Carmelo Anthony told the story about how the Detroit Pistons told him that they were going to draft him with the number 2 overall pick. And he said if they had drafted him, they would have won multiple championships, potentially even going back to back. So my question is, what if the Detroit Pistons drafted Carmelo Anthony with the 2nd overall pick instead of center Darko Milicic? The Pistons' main core was relatively young at the time. Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, and Ben Wallace were all either entering their primes or a few years away from it. If they added a 19-year-old Carmelo Anthony to the roster, they would be adding a prominent scorer who could elevate Detroit's offense. Carmelo would have surpassed Darko's 4.7 minutes per game his rookie year, and likely would have cut into Corliss Williamson and Tayshaun Prince's minutes. Neither of those players put up more than 10.5 points per game, and Carmelo Anthony definitely would have surpassed that, considering he dropped 21 a game his rookie year in Denver. Regardless of his role on the team, he would have found ways to score for the Pistons. It's possible that he would have started in place of Rasheed Wallace or Tayshaun Prince, but for the sake of Detroit keeping their chemistry intact, we'll say Carmelo came off the bench his rookie season. Melo would have thrived in a bench role his rookie year, and Detroit would still go on to win the 2004 championship. After coming off the bench his first year, Carmelo would be getting a promotion to start his sophomore season. In this case, Rasheed Wallace would be the odd man out, and the Pistons would roll with a starting lineup of Billups, Hamilton, Anthony, Prince, and Wallace. This year, the Pistons make it all the way to the NBA Finals like they actually did. They go 7 games with the Spurs, but considering San Antonio's defense was next level that series, Carmelo Anthony alone wouldn't be able to put the Pistons over the Spurs. Going into year 3, Carmelo Anthony looks to take a major leap as one of, if not the go-to scorer on this team. Rip Hamilton would typically be the one leading the Pistons in scoring, but Carmelo Anthony's leap would overtake Hamilton and take the reins as a leading scorer on the team. The Pistons finished the regular season 64-18 with an average of 96.8 points per game, which ranked 19th in the league. You replace Darko's 1.5 points per game with Carmelo's 21 to 22 points per game, those numbers are going to go up. Instead of losing in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Heat, the Pistons take down Miami in 7 games in a 2003 draft class matchup between Wade and Anthony. The Heat had 2 players score 20+ that series, while Detroit only had Rip score that many with Chauncey close behind. If you had another 20+ point per game scorer like Anthony, the Pistons definitely have enough scoring to take down the Heat, considering each game besides Game 6 was decided within 15 points. If Detroit locked down or matches Josh Howard's nearly 15 points per game and Jason Terry's 22 points per game, the Mavs wouldn't be able to keep up with Detroit's scoring abilities. The Pistons win this series in 6 games and win their 2nd championship in 3 years. Heading into the 2006-2007 season, Carmelo Anthony is sitting on 2 rings and looking for more. The Pistons are still sitting atop the Eastern Conference and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron's Cleveland Cavaliers. This time around, instead of Cleveland winning in 6 games, the Pistons turn the series around. Considering the Cavs won each of their games, besides Game 6, by 6 points or less, Carmelo would have been a massive difference maker. Nobody on the Pistons averaged more than 20 points per game, and in Denver, Melo averaged nearly 29 points per game. Those points would have been needed and would have taken them to the finals for a 4th consecutive season. Just like in 2005, though, the Pistons lose to the Duncan-led Spurs in 6 games. As the years go on, the Pistons continue to make roster moves, like adding minor pieces like Aaron Aflalo and Rodney Stuckey, but keep their core of Billups, Hamilton, Prince, and Rasheed Wallace. Melo has taken over as the go-to scorer and offensive leader on the team, while Hamilton and Billups continue to age and leave their primes. The East gets tougher, including the emergence of the Boston Celtics Big Three and LeBron's Cavs improving. They lose in the Eastern Conference Finals 4-2 due to Boston's dominance. That offseason, Detroit decided to trade away one of their core members, Chauncey Billups, in a package deal to acquire NBA legend Allen Iverson. The acquisition of Kwame Brown in the offseason doesn't help them as they finish as the 8th seed and lose to the Cavs in the first round of the playoffs. Melo gives it one more year in Detroit, but with the East continuing to get better and better and the Pistons failing to surround Melo with talent, he demands a trade to New York, just like he did in Denver. Melo gets traded to the Knicks in a similar package that they gave to the Nuggets, and said this time around, Melo is bringing championship experience and 2 rings to the Big Apple. If the Detroit Pistons drafted Carmelo Anthony over Darko Milicic, they still would have won the championship that year. But instead, they would have had 2 championships underneath their belt instead of 1. Carmelo Anthony wouldn't have been a Detroit Piston for life, but he would have helped that city bring 2 more championships. Had the Pistons not traded point guard Chauncey Billups for a very disgruntled Allen Iverson, maybe Melo would have stayed longer in Detroit. But that's not something that we know. But what I think is that if Carmelo Anthony got drafted by the Pistons and not the Nuggets and played in Detroit for the first 8 years of his career, we wouldn't be talking about Carmelo Anthony being one of the greatest NBA players without a ring.